I had an exhilarating time with the $20,000 you mentioned, which apparently I'd saved up recently after returning from a week-long trip overseas. My mother-in-law, Isabella, called me, sounding triumphant about the money. Confused, I couldn't recall having such a substantial sum on hand. As a freelancer, I do have some savings for emergencies, but nothing close to $20,000. Besides, my banking card was safely with me, and I wouldn't leave such a large amount lying around. Isabella claimed I had given it to her, so she helped herself from the sideboard drawer, assuming we were well off. Grateful for the gesture but perplexed, I assured her it was fine, despite not comprehending the source of the money. However, clarity came when my husband Anthony returned home, revealing the truth about the mysterious funds a month later. Isabella's relentless calls followed thereafter, numbering over 80 attempts to reach me. Although I chose to ignore most, one call caught my attention due to her persistence. Frustrated, Isabella accused me of disregarding her, which I found ironic given her repeated demands for money. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Scarlett, a 32-year-old freelance jewelry designer with a longing for children, though my career keeps me occupied. My husband Anthony, also in his early 30s, used to hold a corporate job but now manages my business endeavors. Despite our success, Isabella, who resides alone in her family home, remains convinced we live in opulence and frequently requests financial assistance. Our journey wasn't always smooth sailing. Initially, Anthony supported us with his job, but as my design career blossomed, he transitioned into managing my affairs. With his help, we secured deals with prestigious international brands. However, Isabella fails to grasp the intricacies of our work, mistaking our business engagements for leisurely indulgences. She yearns for a lifestyle akin to ours, oblivious to the sacrifices and obligations it entails. Isabella's requests for extravagant parties or luxurious outings mirror her misunderstanding of our reality. While I could afford to fulfill her wishes, I'm bound by numerous commitments and expenses. Despite our apparent glamour, every event and outing serves a professional purpose, not merely a display of wealth. Unfortunately, Isabella's inability to comprehend this continues to strain our relationship. Despite my persistent refusals, Isabella's relentless requests often find a weak spot in Anthony, her son, who occasionally succumbs to her demands for money. If giving her a little money keeps her quiet, then it's a small price to pay, he rationalizes. For Anthony, it's more convenient to placate her with cash than to endure her disruptions to our work. However, rather than quelling her desires, each concession only fuels Isabella's escalating demands, leaving both Anthony and me exasperated. Recently, she insisted on a new dress for an upcoming gathering she'd been invited to. Wouldn't a two-piece suit suffice? Anthony proposed, attempting to reason with her, recalling past instances where she insisted on expensive attire. But Isabella remained adamant, insisting on nothing short of luxury for the event. Everyone will be dressed to the nines. I can't afford to look shabby, she argued, dismissing the notion of thriftiness. As if that weren't enough, Isabella also demanded a matching bag, further adding to our frustrations. Anthony, seeking a solution to her incessant demands, had previously arranged a credit card in Isabella's name, specifically for her expenses. Initially, she abused the privilege, overspending recklessly until Anthony intervened, imposing restrictions and urging her to seek approval before major purchases. Despite his efforts, Isabella's impulsive spending persisted, leading to exorbitant bills that Anthony was left to settle. Though the card bore her name, it was Anthony who bore the financial burden. Isabella's misconception that the card equated to unlimited funds exasperated Anthony, prompting him to impose spending limits. A credit card isn't a bottomless pit of money, he reminded her, exasperated by her disregard for financial responsibility. Caught in the midst of her whims, Isabella's frustration was palpable when her spending privileges were curtailed. "What the heck? I couldn't pay for my shopping the other day," she explained, failing to grasp the consequences of her unchecked expenditures. Isabella stormed in, berating us for the struggle with payments due to her overspending. We've lowered your monthly limit. It's still sufficient, right? Anthony attempted to reason, but Isabella remained unconvinced. Just because you say so, you two are still dressing up and going to fancy places. How is what I'm doing any different? She retorted bitterly, failing to discern the disparity between our professional engagements and her extravagant desires. Despite imposing restrictions on her credit card, Isabella's discontent persisted, occasionally venting her grievances to Anthony during her visits. Yet, for a while, life carried on without significant hitches. As the year drew to a close, a promising opportunity emerged in my career, a proposal to expand business dealings overseas. Excited by the prospect, I saw it as a chance to elevate my status as a designer. However, amid the anticipation of this new venture, concerns arose about Isabella's reaction. Given her past behavior, the possibility of her wanting to accompany us seemed plausible. We broached the subject delicately with her, but Isabella remained skeptical, accusing us of planning to live lavishly abroad without her. Exhausted by the circular argument, we conceded that she couldn't join us permanently. Instead, we offered to fund a week-long trip for her, hoping to appease her desire for luxury. Isabella accepted with mixed emotions, but the tranquility was short-lived. Days later, as Anthony busied himself with arrangements for our overseas move, Isabella returned, requesting funds for shopping during her trip. "What about the card Anthony gave you?" I reminded her, weary of the ongoing cycle of demands. I inquired, aware of the existence of a card she was meant to use. "That's the thing," Isabella confessed. "Anthony finally took it away from me the other day. It appeared she had been reprimanded for overspending and had the card confiscated. I speculated that Anthony might have been concerned about potential misuse, particularly with fluctuating currency rates overseas. However, I didn't have that kind of money readily available either. I can't give you money without Anthony's approval. Can you ask him?" I suggested. Isabella dismissed the idea, insisting it was futile. "That's why I'm asking you," she retorted, raising her voice as she left, leaving me perplexed. As New Year's approached, Isabella embarked on a 7-day trip abroad. Assuming Anthony had somehow managed the finances, I awaited her return. However, upon her arrival, Isabella revealed an astonishing revelation. On the day of her return, my mobile phone rang. "I'm back. It was so much fun," Isabella exclaimed enthusiastically, recounting her adventures without prompting. "And I may have gone overboard with souvenirs. Couldn't fit them in my suitcase, so I had them shipped from there. Can't wait for them to arrive," she exclaimed. Perplexed, I responded, feeling a sense of annoyance creeping in. "Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast," she continued, referring to the mysterious funds. Confused, I reiterated, "Saved up money? What are you talking about?" I had no recollection of such funds. While I did have savings for business emergencies in my bank account, Isabella couldn't have withdrawn cash from it. Isabella persisted, claiming she found the money in the sideboard drawer of our house. $20,000, she clarified, leaving me baffled at the notion of such a large sum stored at home, especially without my knowledge. I addressed Isabella sternly. "I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but if you took it from our house without permission, that's theft, even if you're family. Do you understand?" Her response was unsettlingly nonchalant. "That's why I'm telling you now that I used it," she replied, unabashedly, justifying her actions with a post-factum report. Frowning, I emphasized the severity of the situation. "I have no idea about this money, but if you took it and used it without saying anything, it's a crime. And if it was something Anthony had set aside for an important deal, it's even more serious." Recalling the absence of any disruptions in our business dealings or payments during Isabella's trip, I couldn't fathom the motive behind her actions. Isabella's entitled reasoning only exacerbated the situation. "You two live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right?" she asserted, oblivious to the gravity of her actions. I sighed, deeply troubled by her lack of remorse. I'll ask Anthony about the money when he gets back, I replied, still perplexed by the whole ordeal. Isabella's response only reinforced her detachment from reality. Anthony will understand. After all, I'm his only mother, and $20,000 isn't much to him, she remarked dismissively before ending the call, leaving me dumbfounded. Later that night, Anthony returned home with a troubled expression. He revealed that he had withdrawn the money from his bank account 10 days prior, intending to use it for an urgent payment. Shocked, I realized the money I had found in the drawer was the same sum Isabella had mentioned. It can't be that you, Anthony began, his suspicions evident. But before he could finish, my heart sank as I recalled Isabella's call earlier that day. No, today Isabella called, saying thanks for the $20,000. Had a blast, I confessed, dreading the repercussions of her actions. I struggled to comprehend what my mother-in-law had done. So it was Anthony's money after all, but what was such a large amount meant for? Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, we've been doing bank transfers for a long time, right? Why cash all of a sudden? I questioned, still puzzled by the situation. Realizing it was Anthony's money but still lacking clarity, I turned to him for answers. So Mom took it without saying. Then it's her fault, I suggested, seeking confirmation. Anthony began to explain the circumstances behind the large sum left at home. After limiting Isabella's credit card amount due to her secretive borrowing, which included consumer finance and credit cards she had opened behind our backs, Anthony decided to repay her debts discreetly. Although if I gave her cash, she'd spend it herself, so I planned to pay the institutions directly, Anthony elaborated. Concerned about maintaining trust with our business partners, and for bookkeeping purposes, he opted for cash payments to avoid leaving a trail in our bank accounts. Supporting Isabella's overseas trip was akin to a parting gift, as we wouldn't be able to provide for her as before after relocating abroad. Understanding the situation, I realized the purpose behind the large sum of money. But what would become of Isabella now? Debt collection notices and payment demands will probably start coming soon. But since she spent it herself, there's nothing we can do, Anthony stated matter-of-factly. As we prepared for the move, Isabella's incessant calls to my mobile phone persisted. Despite Anthony's advice to ignore her, the frequency of the calls made it impossible to disregard. When I counted, there were as many as 80 missed calls from Isabella, almost every day. It was enough to raise concern. Just as I pondered over it, my phone rang again. Hesitant, I missed the call, but it didn't take long for it to ring once more, prompting me to answer. Why aren't you answering my calls? I've called so many times. Isabella's voice quivered, sounding almost on the brink of tears. I'm sorry, I've been busy with moving preparations. What's wrong? I attempted to soothe her, urging her to share her troubles. It's not just what's wrong. They're asking for money, payments almost every day. It's too much, Isabella lamented. Concerned, I inquired if she had contacted Anthony. He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all. Scarlett, you're my only hope now. Please help me, she pleaded, catching me off guard. I was taken aback by the realization that Anthony had taken such drastic measures with his own mother. If he had used the money he had prepared to pay off Isabella's debts, this situation wouldn't have arisen. Now, Isabella seemed inundated with collection letters from finance companies and consumer lenders, with relentless collection calls leaving her feeling helpless. It was a scene I had never witnessed before, something I had only seen in dramas. I'll mention it to Anthony, but I can't guarantee what he'll do. A mother in trouble, it's a son's duty to help, right? Please ask him for me, okay? With that, the call ended. However, the reality was harsh. We needed funds for our business expansion overseas, and we couldn't afford to help Isabella. Moreover, it was her own fault for misusing the money Anthony had set aside to settle her debts. When I informed Anthony about the call upon his return home, exhausted, he dismissed it coldly, showing no inclination to assist his mother. I had every intention of resolving things with Isabella before our departure, but she squandered the opportunity herself. It's true, the money was initially earmarked to settle Isabella's debts, but she opted for a lavish trip instead, leaving no room for excuses. Despite her continued calls, I made the difficult decision to block her number, following Anthony's lead. Though I wished I could aid her, if Anthony chose to ignore her, there was little I could do as his mother. Meanwhile, the day of our move overseas loomed closer, demanding my attention for packing. Surveying the still cluttered room, I reflected on Isabella's recent actions. It seemed she had sold her house to alleviate some of her debts. But it wasn't enough. In addition to the $20,000 Anthony had intended to repay, she had hidden further debts. The magnitude of her financial obligations was staggering, exceeding even the proceeds from selling her property. "Hey, our family home, it's gone. Are you okay with that?" I asked Anthony, noticing a tinge of sadness in his demeanor. Losing the house where one grew up must have felt like a profound loss. Having experienced the early loss of my parents' house, I empathized with the sense of displacement. Unlike me, Anthony had lost his sanctuary due to his living mother, a circumstance I couldn't even begin to fathom. Now residing in a modest apartment, Isabella struggled to repay her remaining debts with a part-time job. At her age, finding work must have been challenging. While I harbored some sympathy for her situation, the repercussions of her reckless spending were undeniable. Even for the elderly, accountability for one's actions remained paramount. As my business flourished overseas and opportunities continued to arise, I found myself inundated with offers from unexpected quarters. Grateful for the newfound success, I juggled a hectic schedule, leaving little time for rest or exploration. Anthony, too, was occupied with various responsibilities. In the midst of it all, the prospect of starting a family still felt like a distant dream, a thought that lingered as I gazed out at the foreign cityscape beyond the window.